One of the statements I made when I was in business to my employees, one of the questions I always ask them, what could you do today to make the world a better place to live in? I dealt with catastrophically injured people. A lot of those people, their spouses had left them, and they were alone at home. I said, when they call an order in to you every day, when you spoke to that person on the phone, you made their day. They didn't have anyone to talk to. They're at home alone. They would call you, be nice to them, put a smile on their face. That makes the world a better place to live in. Around 1987, 88, I get a person comes and knocks on my door in my office building and wants to visit with me, and it's Morris Hensman and Rosemary Henderson. Rosemary was an old friend of mine, and Morris comes in and Rosemary and gives me a little short story about Metropolitan Ministries.
Well, Metropolitan Ministries' mission is to care for the homeless and the hungry, and those at risk of becoming homeless in our community. And whatever those needs are, we organically build ministry to move toward those needs and fulfill those needs.
I said, okay, I'll help you. I said, I'll fill any prescription that you may need for these people free of charge. As long as I'm in business, I said, I'll do that for you. At the time, it was very, very small. It was more of a soup kitchen. But the demand then shifted over. We saw that the women would come with their children in a car, and they could park in the parking lot here at night because they felt safe. And so we started bringing families in there. Well, then we needed to do what these children, so we decided we'd put a little school system on it. Someone else came up with that idea. And then we were able to get some affordable housing. Well, now it's been 10 years or more since I was chair here. And Metropolitan Ministries is truly one of those places that's a highlight. I feel like that maybe I had a small part.
He didn't do it all by himself, but he did it through his influence, through his heart, through his passion for what we're about, and for God's honoring him as a place to serve. He probably didn't want to see us that day, but that was a day that changed the direction of Metropolitan Ministries.
Please help me welcome Cecil Stanford Harrell to the stage.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Dean Hanson for nominating for me and for this prestigious award, and for the Alumni Association for accepting me. And also, I have with me this evening the people who made it possible. You know, one can't do things by themselves. They need help. And I won't tell but one story about Auburn, because I wasn't a brilliant student. And in the pharmacy school, I tried to figure out how I could improve my way, and I wanted to take typing. And I promised the typing teacher later on a little story I'll tell you. And I went back in as a two-fingered typist. And I took the typing lesson. I never could use 10 fingers. And so finally at the end of the quarter, I went to Ms. Williams, and I said, Ms. Williams, I can't pass the test. I said, I took this on my own, so why don't you just give me a C instead of flunking me? And so she turned around and she says, I'll do it for one reason. She says, if you promise never to tell anyone you took typing under me. But tonight, the people who made it important for me to be here this evening, I have at tables, and I'd like to tell a short story about each one of them. I have with me, I guess, the first guy that was Seymour Holt. Seymour was the first young manager for Eli Lilly and Company, and Lilly had a cardinal rule that you do not hire single people. Well, Seymour hired me, and I was single. Sure enough, Lilly was right. I lasted about 3 years, and he's sitting over here right in front of me. Seymour, stand up there for him. Seymour got up, and after all these years, he says he fired me, and I said I quit. Well, we continued our relationship over the years, and he told me one thing I always never forgot. When you have a product to sell, make sure everyone benefits. Now, think about that for a minute. You want to sell a product that's a good product and everyone benefits, whether in the pharmacy deal, it was the insurance company that benefited for me. It was the patient that benefited from it, and I benefited from it. So I taught that was where Seymour taught me those things. And then when I started to have my public offering, I needed to dress it up with some people. So I asked Seymour to be on my board. He had just come out and he was with the best-selling drug that ever been sold in America, or in the world, I guess, called Prozac. Some of you may have been taking it. Anyway, so Lilly wouldn't let Seymour on my board because I wanted him on there, but nevertheless, he came on my board later on after he retired from Lilly, and we've maintained this relationship many years. I have also with me my best buddy's wife. We played golf, I guess, in West Africa. We played in Mexico. We went fishing everywhere in the world. This was not in my career life, but this was after I sold. Catherine Straz, she's with us this evening. My sister Carolyn. My sister graduated from Auburn in home economics. We had an older brother who graduated from Auburn in pharmacy school. Our father finished his pre-med in 1901 here in pharmacy. So we have a long history of Auburn graduates in here. My daughter finished last year with a master's in nursing here. And her young son is not here tonight, neither one of them. And he's going to prep school this fall. Also was Morris Henchman, who you saw on the screen a few moments ago. Morris is with us over here. And you already heard his story, but you hadn't heard the story of Dave Redmond, who's here with us this evening as well. Dave came over after I became a public company, and I was a salesman. So consequently, I wasn't very good with numbers and keeping it up with profits and loss. And I had a few problems, and so David came in, straightened things back out again, and sold the company for me. So then later on, I was involved in another public company. We had problems. Who do I go to? Dave Redmond. He turns around, straightens it up. We sell that company. And he's been doing that for many years since then. I think he just got through selling another one big time. Also, when Dave came to work for me, he introduced me to Gail Miller. He said, Stan, you're pretty good at selling. He says, however, you're not very good personally with your own funds. And so we need somebody else. So we have Gail Miller and her husband Keith here with us this evening. And so they kind of kept my personal life straightened out a little bit. And Gail has still been with me, like she's here this evening, and she still takes care of me and tells me what I can do and I can't do. So life has been good. Auburn's a great university. I've been coming back, after I was able to afford it, I guess, come back, and I guess 1995 or somewhere like that, I came on the foundation board. Been back to football games for a long time, many times since then. But I don't know what else except to say about the gratitude and appreciation I have for this award, because with the fundamentals of life, I guess I came to Auburn. I remember my professors more than I do my classmates. I had some wonderful professors like that Miss Williams who gave me that nice C. And I don't know if anyone in here ever had P.P. Powell for professor or not. Does he raise anybody know P.P. Powell? Well, P.P. was a tough old fellow. Didn't like us pharmacy students because we wouldn't major in chemistry. And so when I came to Auburn, I transferred over here from Marion Institute, and the boys told me, he said, Stan, don't you take, not organic, but anyway, one of the chemistry courses under P.P. Powell. He said he hates pharmacy students. He said anyone takes that much chemistry needs to be a chemistry major. Well, I knew P.P. Powell. I'd already studied him because I studied my professors more than I think I did my books. And P.P. Powell looked over there, and I breezed in. I didn't do very well in the class. Turned around, I had a great high C average, maybe a mid C. P.P. Powell flunks me. So I go to him after the class, and I said, Professor Powell, I said, you flunked me in this course. I said, yes, sir. I said, I had a lot better grades than some of these other students in this class. Why'd you flunk me? He said, Harrell, I knew your daddy. Yes, sir. I know your uncle. I said, yes, sir. And he kept going through everybody in the family that I knew. And he says, I finally came up and told me, he says, Harrell, he said, I just couldn't let you go through my class not knowing any more than you did. So, okay. So what do? I go back and take it over to him again. I take the same doggone course again from him. So I go there and I study a little bit harder this time. I have a good solid B. And he gives me a C. I go back over there to him and I jump all over him again. He pulled that little cigarette on that whole holder. He says, Cecil, he says, any man takes a course twice don't deserve over a C. So you can tell I wasn't the greatest student in the world, but Auburn was a uniting force. I went to work for Lilly. I learned those points of being able to connect with people. And one last thing I'll tell about the little small town that I grew up in Alabama was Thomaston, Alabama. And when I had my business and I was first getting ready to make a big break and trying to take it nationally, I went to Boston, Massachusetts, and I had a display in the Armory there. And there was one person for Liberty Mutual whom I felt like that I really needed to get to him because he was in charge of all the rehab nurses across the country. Didn't know what it looked like. All I knew was what his name was. And every time that people would come by my booth, I'd ask them, I said, have you seen Mr. Magliosi? And they said, no, we haven't. And so I kept on, and finally one guy came over and had his name tag kind of covered and looked at me and he said, I understand you're looking for me. Well, I didn't know exactly how to answer it. And before I could respond, he stuck his hand out and he said, I'm Tony Magliosi. I said, yes, I'd like to visit with you. I did. He set up an appointment, and I went and saw him. He said, where are you from? I said, a little small town in Alabama called Thomaston. And he said, well, how far is that from Farnsdale? Now, here I am in Boston, Massachusetts, and this guy's asking me how far did I go from Farnsdale. I swallowed real hard, and I said, well, Mr. Magliosi, I could walk it if I had to, but I'd rather ride my bicycle. Well, he retired from Liberty Mutual shortly thereafterwards and came to work for me. And he was very instrumental in me growing the company as I did. So the company I did, the company we did. We grew the company. Dave Redmond grew the company. Seymour grew the company, as well as other people. And so I turned around and told Mr. Maglio, he said, do you know my uncle? And he gave me an Italian name, and I said, Mr. Magliosi, I said, there's no Italians that I know in Marengo County. But it was a great story. Building a company is a wonderful part of everyone's life who's had the opportunity to do it. But it's knowing people. It's people that grow companies, not an individual. Relationships, and that's the important part. Relationship, whether it's with the university that you attended, whether it's with your fellow employees, or your people you go to church with every day on Sundays. Relationship. Just think, and that's where success in life comes from relationships that we have. And I'd like to thank Auburn University again for giving me this award, because the relationships that I've had here at the university over the years have been great. And I'll tell you one small little story about relationships on that. 2 years ago, at the Auburn, Georgia football game, I was going into the stadium and I heard someone yell, "Let's go shoot some quail." And in those days, I won't say a mistake, but I bought a place in South Georgia and shot quail. And I invited a lot of, Joe Whitt was one of them, and came up there and shot quail. And the football coaches came over there. And it was Tommy Tuberville. And he turned around and says, "How's David?" That's Catherine's husband. He shot quail with Tommy. So the relationship we built there with the university that I did was great. And Betty DeMett was a very important part of my earlier relationships with Auburn. So I want to thank the university again, and I'll let someone else get up and give a little chat. Thank you very much.